Alive and Well STL is a presentation of the St. Louis Regional Health Commission and Rare Gem Productions to build a healthier St. Louis. Power up with the positive. Learn more at oneraregem.com. That's ONERAREGEM.com.
Support for Alive and Well STL comes from Beyond Housing, helps entire communities become better places to live. Learn more at beyondhousing.org.
The Regional Health Commission works in partnership with regional health sector advocates and stakeholders to improve healthcare access, reduce health disparities, and improve health outcomes for the uninsured and the underinsured in St. Louis City and County.
Alive and Well STL with Bethany Johnson-Javois, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network.
So when we think about someone who's leaving the correction system, their path to Alive and Well has to be a difficult one that's filled with a lot of uphill climbs. What is this cycle? What is the trauma of incarceration itself and the trauma that perhaps preceded it that got many people, our family members, our friends, those that we worship with, in these situations? What is that cycle?
If we can turn that tide and get people to feel a part of the community so that crime becomes something that is not, I don't have anything else to do. I don't have any other way to make my way in this society. Am I more comfortable in prison than I am in society? Our impact is to help them understand that they can become contributing members not only to the community, but more importantly to their family.
And I think it also, just to echo what Brenda talked about, it also helps to interrupt the cycle too.
Yes.
We'll be right back.
Alive and Well STL.
I'm going to ask both of you, in context of your work with a very vulnerable and powerful population, what's your definition of alive and well?
Well, I guess I'll start. As I think about alive and well, it is, trying to make that distinction between living and existing. And with alive and well, it's more about living, having a full appreciation for what's going on with you, what's going on around you, and not just going through the daily motions of life.
Yeah, and for those that we serve, I think all of that is true. And I would say that if one can develop a sense of community and a part of that community, particularly if they have not lived in the community for a good many of their lives, that is very important to how they live the rest of their lives.
Alive and Well STL.
Good morning, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm Bethany Johnson-Javois, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network, Commission on Ferguson, and host of Alive and Well STL, sponsored by the St. Louis Regional Health Commission. Today, we are joined in the studio by Brenda Mahr, Chief Executive Officer of Employment Connection, and Dr. Chammie Austin, Associate Professor of Psychology at Maryville University and Adjunct Professor of Psychology at St. Louis University. That's a lot.
That's a lot. I keep busy.
Wow. So as we talk and think about what it means for our community to be alive and well, I'm so pleased to be speaking with both of you and want to thank you for your time to join us on today's show.
Thank you for having us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very eager to jump right in, and we're going to do so. And Brenda, you are a repeat guest on the show, but could you remind us again of what your work is at Employment Connections?
Yeah, our mission is to assist persons with limited opportunity to self-sufficiency, and the programs that intersect to make a difference in that have to do with employment, housing, and behavioral health. And that's where Dr. Austin and his team and SLU come in. This program has been operating for 8 years. We're in our 8th year of funding.
Mm-hmm.
We serve about 450 people, mostly who are reentering society from the prison population. We're funded, I have to get this in, by the St. Louis Mental Health Board, and this year we're happy to announce that funding has been expanded to serve Illinois through funding from United Way of Greater St. Louis and St. Louis County residents through the Missouri Foundation for Health.
Dr. Austin, what has been the impact of this partnership from your perspective?
From my perspective, I think what we've seen is that we have been able to assist a number of individuals re-enter into the community to help them find sustainable employment, and from our end to especially address their mental health needs.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So when we think about someone who's leaving the correction system, their path to alive and well has to be a difficult one that's filled with a lot of uphill climbs. I'm sure you personally have witnessed clients conquer these steep climbs and reach Alive and Well. So I'm going to ask you, based on your experiences, can you create a vision for us based on the work that you're doing together that is now expanding? What's the vision of impact for this work?
Well, I think the impact would be, or the vision that we would have, is for them to successfully reintegrate into the community, to start living more healthy and fulfilling lives, and to redress some of the problems that many of the clients have experienced in the past.
And Brenda, what are your thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so many people reentering society end up reoffending. So the recidivism rates have a huge impact on the community in terms of what it costs us to incarcerate people. If we can turn that tide and get people to feel a part of the community so that crime becomes something that is not, I don't have anything else to do, I don't have any other way to make my way in this society. Am I more comfortable in prison than I am in society? Our impact is to help them understand that they can become contributing members not only to the community, but more importantly to their families.
And I think it also, just to echo what Brenda talked about, it also helps to interrupt a cycle too.
Yes.
What is this cycle? What is the trauma of incarceration itself and the trauma that perhaps preceded it that got many people, our family members, our friends, those that we worship with, in these situations? What is that cycle?
I think it's a complex phenomenon that we tend to see. So I think it's not easy just to pinpoint this one event or this one situation, but I think we find that a number of factors might kind of conspire to put people in positions to engage in behaviors that are going to lead them to incarceration. Now, I think, once that happens, one of the problems that we might see is that once you become part of the system, then other kind of situations, other kind of factors will now intervene in your life to limit your opportunities if you don't aggressively do something to redress those problems, right? And so what we may tend to also see happen is that once you're part of the system, then the people that care about you, the people, your family members, they're also impacted by that. And so now this cycle could potentially perpetuate itself unless, like the work that I do with Brenda, we find some kind of way to assist the clients in interrupting that cycle.
So in the interruption of the cycle, my understanding is that this includes, in this partnership, therapy services that address depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other mental health disorders. Can either of you explain for the listeners how prevalent or widespread these conditions are that you see every day?
I'll go ahead and tackle that if Brenda wants to hold off for a second.
Right ahead. That's your area.
Okay. These disorders are very common in many of the folks that we tend to do work with. I think in large part because, like in the greater community, many of these mental health concerns go unaddressed, right? So with the populations of folks that we tend to work with, again, we find that their experiences in some ways mimic folks who don't have prison histories or jail histories. So we have to get them to see how their mental health needs are connected to the behaviors they engage in.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Now, Ms. Mahr, from your lens, your perspective, your organization offers a very key component of breaking and interrupting cycles through employment connections, as it's named so appropriately. What impact does Dr. Austin's work have on the life of your clients, including their ability to find and maintain employment?
Right. Well, a couple of things that we're doing that are services we didn't previously provide for our clients that are very helpful. One group is called the X-Files.
Okay.
Appropriately termed because it's a therapeutic support group for offenders. It was designed in part by Dr. Austin and his PhD students along with the offenders themselves, where they can freely come without repercussions and talk about issues, whether it's about their parole officer, on the job issues, this is after employment, to help them retain employment and start thinking about not just jobs but careers and where they really fit into society. Help them to reestablish trust in a system that they don't trust. And a community that oftentimes when they return from prison, they feel, where do I belong? I don't have a sense of belonging in their atmosphere. We hear stories of people that have gone to join church, and then church members find out that they're offenders, and, they say to them, wow, this may be not the right place for you.
Absolutely.
And we know now that the research is showing that indicators of successful reentry is not just employment, which it used to be, but whether or not the former offender can actually reintegrate into society and develop a positive social structure.
Now, to your point about reintegration, it's something that I've observed. We are saying, reintegration and resiliency and hope and all those words. But even in the naming, ex-offender, correction system, they're still connected in many ways, the terminology, to what happened in the past. What is a more respectful way to address this population and this individual? Do you have words that you can offer? Because there's even language that I need to change. Please assist us with that.
Well, I think, the term ex-offender, again, is going to carry some stigma.
Yeah.
I think there's no escaping that. But we can always think of the individuals as individuals rather than giving them this particular label.
Right.
But as Brenda mentioned, in terms of the research, again, this is the terminology that's oftentimes used. It is ex-offender.
Yeah, but it's not empowering.
No, it's
and
not.
And it does not get to resilience. So how do we change that?
It's not empowering. But again, in our work with clients, we try to talk with them about not necessarily letting their offense define them. Okay, so other people may think of you as an offender or an ex-offender, but that doesn't have to define who you are. Your past mistakes or your past transgressions don't get to define where you go from here.
Ms. Mahr, the clients, you talked about a lack of trust in the system. Now we're talking about mental health and stigma related to that. Do you find clients resistive to the use of therapies? What's the steps that must be taken that they begin to embrace these therapies?
Well, we are very sensitive to people and the fact that we want to label them. So as opposed to doing that, we market this program to the clients. It's not a situation where they have to attend.
Okay.
And so the way we use a very soft sell approach, talking about stressors and the impact on your life and how people, regardless of their station in life, are often direly affected by stress. Create an atmosphere where we talk in the group about, if you need to talk with someone individually, we're here from you. That's kind of the sale we use.
Common sense approach.
Real simple.
Well, I think there is a good deal of common sense to that. But, direct answer to your questions, a lot of our clients are going to be reticent to seeking our services. And one of the things that we try to do is to convey to them the significance of addressing their mental health issues as much as they would address their physical health issues, too.
That's right.
Right. And let's think about, how does your mental health functioning impact your ability to sustain long-term employment? And what other areas, or how else might good mental health impact your ability to live? And Brenda mentioned, we do employ a soft sell approach. And again, we get a number of folks who will buy into that approach. And we still will have some other folks who may think, yeah, this mental health thing, I'm not feeling that so much.
But you do see more of an openness when it's presented in this way.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I could understand that. So we also know that in addition to this individual that has been incarcerated, there are families and communities that are also enduring this trauma, their absence and grief and loss around this as well. So do you have any advice for listeners who are family members, caregivers, supporters of this particular segment of our community, who need some support, who need some help, who need to know how to be positive and activated and not living in the grief of the loss?
Well, I would say just make sure you don't ignore the impact that the incarceration had on the family members.
Okay.
And I think we all can identify that we need to help the person who's trying to reenter. But let's not forget that whether the offense they committed was directly aimed at or targeted to the family or not, the family members, they're also going to suffer from that person's incarceration.
Yeah.
So we can't ignore the needs that those folks have to deal with this person being gone. If the offense was targeted at them, what kind of feelings do I have about that? But then to also offer them support as well as the person who's trying to reenter the community.
Does your program allow for that engagement as well?
Directly?
No.
No.
But we can offer assistance to them even prior to a person being released into a community. One of the ways that you help family is by engaging them to take action. People feel the families as well as the clients, okay, I'm out, what do I do? You know, where do I go? How do I get help? And there's so many resources in the community. So if you can engage, and that's what we try to do, families to seek out the available services in the community and connect them with the offender to determine, is this a program that would be helpful for my child? Oh, he's going to need health services. Are there any health services available in the community that are free of charge? Blah, 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 you know, that kind of thing. If they can then screen those programs that might best suit the needs of their family member that's retaining, the fact that they're taking action to help that family member that's coming home, I think empowers them. It also empowers the client because then they have an action plan. It helps them mobilize so that they can take responsibility for their own life. Because many of them, as I said before, they just don't know what to do when they get home. They know, I've got to get a job or I'm going back to jail, and my PO said it's going to happen. I've got to drop urine, and I've got to see my PO. That's not a lot of stuff. And I've got to pay my restitution.
Right.
And I've got to pay my child support. So those are things that they may be laden with on the have-tos, but the things that's going to help them. All of a sudden, they now have all this pressure on them of paying back to society for what their past transgressions. So, but how do they do that when they come out with virtually nothing?
Absolutely. Give me 2 action steps for listeners that you see we need to take today. Ms. Mahr, I hear the urgency in your voice and the frustration with the system and the frustration with many things that need to be right-sized. So what are the 2 action steps, and who do you direct those to move this system and begin to heal it? And I'll ask you the same.
I don't know how quickly I can do this, but you'll remember the article I wrote on Ferguson that talked about what if he had not been killed, and the fact that he had had encounters with the law. And that's what happens with so many of our young people. They have encounters in the law with, in some communities that are not African American, they get help, support, and advice from their local law enforcement. Should we call it a slap on the wrist, or more appropriately, it's a childhood prank. The same situation in the African American community might land a person in jail that's very young, so they get tied into the system at an extremely early age. We need to figure out how we apply the same slap on the wrist across the entire community by law enforcement and actually weed out who's the kid that's being mischievous and doing something silly, as many of us did in childhood, throwing rocks or, you know, whatever it was, and who's the kid that really needs to be incarcerated. So that's the first thing. The second is what I talked about earlier, that family members and people who are affected by crime begin to take action and develop action plans that make sense in their community and hold their politicians and those powers to be accountable for what happens in their communities.
And I'll echo some of what Brenda mentioned. Think about support broadly defined in that some guidance for our young folks, some mentorship for our young folks, I think would go a long way. And I'm also thinking financial support, monies to develop programs to support that mentorship, that guidance, monies to support programs that address mental health concerns, because oftentimes we have feelings we don't know what to do with. So I'd say there are some systemic kinds of concerns that money could address, and there's some problems on family levels, you know, in terms of guidance and mentorship that would assist us.
Well, I want to thank both of you for your contribution and for elevating this topic to this show. I also want to say that I'm really interested and want to offer to you that I'd like to get into rooms with family members and into rooms with affected individuals to really talk about this issue for a little longer than a 15-minute time frame. This is such a good foundation that's laying, but it's so important to get voices into this show and into this community so that we can hear what is the impact, what is that frustration like living it. We've got to get that out so people understand that. So I'm hoping this is part 1. and that both of you will help me to engage a part 2 and 3 where we really blow out this issue so that we can begin to do steps 1 and 2 that both of you have given us on this morning's show. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone that listened to part 1 of a very impactful show. We need to put this on our minds and our hearts to pray about and to pray through. For more information about today's program and to become involved in Alive and Well STL, please download the smartphone application Bonfire, BONFYRE, and search for Alive and Well, or visit us online at aliveandwellstl.com.
You are invited to join the conversation. If you, your family, or your organization is interested in talking about how we better the well-being of the region, sign up for more information, join the conversation, log on to aliveandwellstl.com, and let's build a plan on how we can work together and improve our overall health and become alive and well. The Regional Health Commission with Chief Executive Officer Robert Friend Jr. committed to providing a detailed review of change over the past decade in 14 leading health indicators for the city and county of St. Louis. The first decade review of health status report, an update to building a healthier St. Louis. Discover the narrative, the data, and celebrate the progress already made to improve healthcare access and reduce health disparities in our region. Learn more at stlrhc.org. Alive and Well STL is another positive production of Rare Gem Productions. Thanks for listening.